Okay. No, we should turn that off. Okay. Are we seeing a YouTube feed still? Okay, it's switched. Good. Very good. All right, good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting date is Monday, October 17th, 2022. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to record our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. Councillors are in the chamber in Listowel, joined by the clerk and some staff who are supporting this meeting. We are still supported as well by various digital technologies, and some staff, delegates, and experts will join us by web conferencing. Some members of the public, I see one actually, have also joined us in the chamber. We begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers as able are invited to stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. As already noted, tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in an inappropriate and/or unacceptable behavior and/or comments. Thank you. Welcome to those who are joining us via the YouTube channel. Welcome to councillors, to staff, and delegates who may participate in this meeting. At this time, I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. We are all accounted for on council this evening in the chambers. Let us move to item 2.1 of our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk if not already done so. Councillors are further reminded that should a conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. And we have had two pre-notes on this, so first we'll call on Councillor Andreessen. Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg, and good evening, fellow councillors. Tonight I'll be declaring pecuniary interest on item 5.3.2 pertaining to the binning drain, as my family and our company own land on that drain. As a result, I'll refrain from participating in the confirmatory bylaw, which is 13.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andreessen, and we've also heard ahead from Councillor Behrens. Welcome, Councillor Behrens.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Through you, I will declare a conflict of pecuniary interest on 5.3.1, the Bearfelts Municipal Drain, as I have family members that are assessed on that drain, and as well 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Behrens. Any other councillors wishing to make a declaration that didn't pre-advise? All right, seeing none, let's move forward then. All participants are invited to speak when called upon by yours truly, serving as chair. Those participating remotely who wish to speak may draw the attention of the clerk through our conferencing technology's text chat function. Remote participants are generally asked to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I recognize your right to the floor. If, when I do so, recognize I don't hear you because you are muted or having some technical difficulty, I will advise. I invite, as always, some patience with these processes. There's a few moving parts, and I feel often like an astronaut trying to control bits and pieces of the technology. Regarding item 2.2 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads as follows, that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Rothwell, thank you, and Councillor Duncan is our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Let's move to item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they're believed to be non-contentious, yet they warrant council's recognition and/or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and/or individual action may do so. There are 6 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? I'm not seeing any hands raised, so let's move to the resolution that's proposed as follows, that consent items 3.1 to 3.6 be received for information and the minutes of the October 3rd, 2022 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Behrens, thank you. Councillor Anstead as our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. At this time, it's proposed that we move on to agenda item number 4. We do not have public meetings for this evening's council meeting. Further, we have no delegations that have asked for an audience with council in conformance with our policies at this time. That brings us then to item 5, reports from departments and key staff. First is an item coming from the CAO's department. For item 5.1.1, the HR team lead, Kelly Fraser, has brought forward a recommendation that this council suspend the COVID-19 vaccination policy in line with such efforts of many of our neighbors. I'll invite Ms. Fraser to address this report and recommendation. Welcome, Ms. Fraser.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Good evening, Council. So I'm here tonight to recommend that Council approves the suspension of our mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policy, with the understanding that appropriate requirements may be reinstated if there are any changes to public health. With the evolving changes in the current environment, using federal and provincial restrictions, we continue to align with best practices while maintaining the health and safety of staff as our first priority. So some key comparators for reference in this report that was given. So West Perth, the Township of Perth East, and Perth County all suspended their mandatory COVID vaccination policies at this time. The senior management team is also on board with this proposal. And HR will, of course, continue to inform new hires and staff of any ongoing safety measures and will communicate any policy changes as needed. So lastly, recruitment remains extremely competitive. As I'm sure you all know, it's definitely everywhere. So suspending this mandatory vaccine policy will remove one extra barrier to that. So in summary, I am recommending that Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the suspension of the COVID-19 vaccination policy effective October 17th.
Thank you, Ms. Fraser. Councillors, any questions or first comments on this matter for Ms. Fraser? I'm not seeing any, so why don't we put the resolution on the floor then as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the suspension of the COVID-19 vaccination policy effective October 17th, 2022. Can I call for mover? Deputy Mayor Kellam, thank you, and Councillor Richardson will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fraser.
Thank you, Council.
I do want to send a gentle public message that COVID-19 is continuing to circulate in our community and that due care should be taken by most individuals at this point in time. But I think this is a prudent to move on the part of our council to move forward our corporation's agenda. All right, next up is item 5.2, reports from the Strategic Initiatives portfolio. For item 5.2.1, our Manager of Strategic Initiatives, Jessica McLean, brings forward a report earlier requested by this council that reviews the landscape related to affordable and attainable housing in our community and that outlines something of a work plan to address this critical issue. I'll call on Ms. McLean to introduce council to the report. Ms. McLean, I assume that you are remote, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg, and good evening, Council. In May 2022, North Perth Council requested that staff prepare a report regarding what actions the municipality and the County of Perth are currently taking related to affordable housing, including the development of an action plan. So tonight I have for you a report sharing background information and a proposed housing work plan for approval. In January 2022, a report was presented to Council outlining the municipality's recent and current actions on housing. An overview of these actions is attached to the current report. More recently, we have performed a jurisdictional scan of documents from the federal and provincial government, public service associations, and other municipalities to gain an understanding of what our partners are doing to address the housing issue. Discussions and information collection have also occurred over recent years between council, the management team, municipal staff, and the community, for example, the Mayor's Task Force on Affordable Housing. A key finding of this jurisdictional scan is that housing is a very complex issue which requires an all-of-government approach. The collaboration of the federal, provincial, and municipal government is essential to brainstorm and develop solutions to meet the needs of our citizens. It was also noted through the scan and other discussions the variance in definitions of affordable housing. For the purpose of our work plan activities and future discussions, North Perth will use the definition of affordability included in the provincial policy statement, and this is in line with the Perth County Planning Department, as well as the definition of attainable housing included in the Stratford, Perth, and St. Mary's Housing and Homelessness Plan. And these definitions are listed in the report. A proposed work plan is included in this report for Council's consideration and approval. The work plan will guide the activities of staff over the next month and beyond in relation to the municipal housing portfolio. This work plan is not static and it will evolve as new opportunities related to housing present themselves. This includes grant funding and potential project partnerships. Staff will also continue to support the efforts of our housing partners in areas such as homelessness. So at the current time, staff are in the investigation and research phase of the activities listed in the work plan. Progress reports on the work plan activities will be brought before Council on a regular basis, with any budgetary requests being included in the municipality's annual budget process. Public stakeholder engagement will also be significant and very vital to the success of our work plan activities. So at this time, I'm seeking approval for the work plan as proposed and open to any questions that Council may have.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Colleagues, questions or first comments on this matter? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and good evening to fellow members of Council. Jessica, thanks very much for the report. I note on page 34 of the agenda item, or agenda package, page 3 of your report, we talk about developing helpful tools, guides, checklists, etc., to support residents and builders who are interested in constructing additional dwelling units. That's one of the recommendations of the Mayor's Task Force on Affordable Housing. And again, I believe that this is, and the committee, the Mayor's Task Force, believe that this was one of the critical issues that we needed to move forward with as soon as possible. And I'll say it again, I think it's crucial that North Perth staff and county staff provide those documents sooner rather than later. I see this as a relatively low-hanging fruit, which can encourage and support our residents within our community that may be considering having an additional dwelling unit to help ease the burden for those that are looking for affordable housing within our community. So with that said, I appreciate the report. It is comprehensive. I would like to see a specific timeline item for those quick wins, as I'll say. There are other jurisdictions within Perth County that have, for example, information on additional dwelling units on their websites, for example, Perth East. And I think it's crucial that North Perth moves forward with this as soon as possible. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have an update related to that. I have been in discussions with the County Planning Department, and they are currently working on a set of guidelines. So hopefully we can have something presented to Council in the near future.
Thanks, and I was going to contribute to that comment. That certainly the county council's task force or standing committee on affordability and attainability of housing and homelessness has, as part of its work plan as well, a generation of appropriate tools and materials to support infill, essentially, amongst other possibilities. So I know that Jessica is maintaining a tight relationship with those at the county who are also working on similar tasks. Any other questions or first comments on this? Okay, I have a resolution for our consideration then, as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the Housing in North Perth Work Plan Report dated October 17th, 2022 for information, and that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the North Perth Housing Work Plan with associated budgetary requests to be included in the 2023 municipal budget process. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Rothwell, thank you. Seconder is Councillor Johnston. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this resolution? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. McLean. But I think that you may still be involved in our next item. So let's turn to item number 5.2.2.
Kim is here to do that
Kim is here.
presentation.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you
All
very
right.
much, Council.
Thank you. All right, so for item 5.2.2, Council receives an update from the work done by the North Perth Economic Development Advisory Committee to prioritize key actions for its continuing engagement into the next term of Council and through the Budget 2023 process. I'm going to call, I guess, on Ms. Kim Couch, our Economic Development Coordinator, to introduce Council to this report. Ms. Couch, the floor is yours. Ms. Couch, we think you're muted.
My apologies. In October of 2021, the restructured North Perth Economic Development Advisory Committee, known as NPEDAC for short, submitted a report to North Perth Council for information identifying a list of economic development priorities of importance to all business sectors of North Perth. 4 economic development priority topics were identified. 1, youth retention and attraction. 2, connectivity to internet for all businesses. 3, affordable and attainable housing. And 4, labor attraction and retention. An extensive review of these priorities, plus the addition of the actions that are arising from the Agriculture Excellence Strategy, is now complete. As directed by Council, NPEDAC is now submitting recommendations to give clarity to economic development priorities and activities and inform budgetary decision-making going forward, with emphasis in 2023. Priority implementation plan attached to this report itemizes key priority categories and actions for each of the 5 economic development priority topics. A decision-making exercise was used by NPEDAC to arrive at the findings and top recommendations shared in the report. The NPEDAC implementation plan is organized in implementation phase order. Items in phase 1 will be added for consideration during the 2023 budget process. A couple of other points just to note. Items already being addressed via the corporate strategic plan and departmental business plans were asterisked in the implementation plan. Initial estimates for staff resources and costs have been noted. As well, the priority categories and actions to be completed in phase 1 are listed within the report. So the first is under the topic of agriculture, technology, and innovation, which is positioning for success. It involves the continuation with efforts to refine the workings of NPEDAC, establish an agriculture and agribusiness advisory forum, work with Perth County Federation of Agriculture to establish an annual farm tour and roundtable event, establish centralized business and investment concierge service, as well as linking the design, implementation, and fine-tuning of these services to the mandate of the North Perth Economic Development Advisory Committee. The second topic or priority, or key priority, is business partnership in housing development, which falls under the affordable and attainable housing priority. This involves exploring the Community Improvement Plan, or CIP, and other policy options to support housing supports. A new app marketing on social channels and to businesses. Letter and developing letters and meeting with MPs, MPP to discuss needs and funding and policy support. And then the third priority, and I'll address why we've added a third, under capacity building, which is also an agriculture, technology, and innovation priority. Capacity building includes mentorship or mentoring business savvy, forward-thinking sector businesses with an eye to potential recruitment on the Municipal Advisory Forum, adopting an integrated approach to municipal policy considerations and future project initiatives by tasking municipal advisory forums to consider and make recommendations on potential synergies in the North Perth Farm and Food Forward Vision. And finally, reviewing the mandate of Set 7 Skills and Technology, North Perth and Region Learning Hub, and the proposed Ag Science Center project to include skills development, educational outreach, mentoring, and career matching features in collaboration with local businesses and relevant provincial institutions. So a couple of items is that we did look to include the third priority as an opportunity as a tiebreaker, and that would be addressed. The third item would be addressed only upon completion of the second the housing priority. And we wish to bring this information forward for council's recommendation or approval, and then also to direct staff to include the implementation of the NPEDAC top 2 priorities and actions in the 2023 budget proposal. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Couch. Council questions or comments on this? Councillor Barons.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Kim, the committee obviously has done some excellent work on really narrowing down and getting an actual strategic plan to focus on a number of things. And I do greatly appreciate that. My question to you is on page 2, it talks about agriculture, technology, and innovation. I'm just hoping, and this is more of a comment, that you will consider not having such a narrow scope to, say, the Perth County Federation of Agriculture. There are several farm organizations, and there's also industry organizations such as the Interior Milk Producers, the chicken producers, things like that. So I would prefer that you maybe didn't narrow the scope so much, because I think that would give you more diversity in what you're asking. And it kind of leads into another point that I was going to make about the skills lab, because you're going to have to, if the intent is to offer skills to people who are working in the agricultural sector, you're going to have to take in a variety of agricultural corporations to know what they're looking for. So what a dairy farmer would be looking for might be very much different than what a grains and oilseeds producer might be looking for. So I think that's why I was thinking expand the scope a wee bit to, and you could simply say farm organizations, because that's really what they are. I was a little bit confused. I really don't understand this is my final point, the concierge service for investment and business. I read it a couple times, and I don't think I'm quite understanding what the intention of that is. If you could explain. Thanks.
Ms. Couch.
In response to your questions, I think that when MKA and Associates had devised the plan, they felt that focusing on Perth County Federation of Agriculture was a good focus area to work as a partner. But I do see the benefit in ensuring we have representation for a farm tour, and I'm certain we can expand to consider other farm organizations in that initiative. As far as skills for agriculture, skills to be considered for use at through Set 7, I know that we'll do a thorough evaluation of the skills being requested and that would be useful to the. We do have a very broad variety of agriculture businesses within North Perth, and we'll certainly do our best to ensure that the needs of those varying sectors will be considered. The final question on the concierge, it's a term that just kind of summarizes, or that it's a point person or a first contact for someone that would be a specialist in helping businesses to understand the requirements and needs specifically for agriculture, business development, and growth within North Perth. So it would involve the addition of one FTE because it is an extremely specialized area to understand the legislated and government, both federal and provincial requirements. And so that is why it had been recommended in the agricultural excellence strategy to have it as to recruit one additional person. And so that again is why it will be brought forward to North Perth Council during the budgetary process for 2023. Hopefully that clarifies, but I'm certainly open to more questions.
Okay. Councillor Burns, I think, has a supplementary.
Just supplementary to that, Kim, I really, really want to encourage you or the committee to consider all farm organizations. Not everyone in Perth County who owns a farm belongs to the Perth Federation. And it is critically important that you don't narrow the scope. I think, and it's hard to explain unless you live it every day, but there is so much difference in what a dairy farmer would need compared to a cash cropper. Yes, they both need electronics and computers, but they're different beasts. So I really think that in order to get, and that was example for like skills or whatever, I really do think you need to just say all farm organizations because it's a very narrow scope. There are a lot of organizations out there doing great work on behalf of agriculture, and I sincerely would hate to see you narrow your scope. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Anyone else with comments or questions at this point? Okay, I have a resolution then for consideration as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the NPEDAC Priority Implementation Plan 2023 report dated October 17th, 2022 as information, and further that staff are directed to include implementation of NPEDAC top 2 priorities and actions in the 2023 budget proposal. I call for a mover, Councillor Andreessen, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Burns. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thanks for the report. Appreciate that. My concern is just the wording of the second piece of the recommendation. And just for clarity, I would suggest that instead of the NPEDAC's top 2 priorities and actions, we actually specifically list the items that are in the report, so that there's an understanding that there's, even though there's technically 3 priorities, and you really don't understand that if you actually read what it says. I would appreciate, and it doesn't change the intent of what is in the motion, but I would appreciate if we could actually list agriculture, technology, and innovation, affordable and attainable housing, and if you want to say tied, that's fine, and then agriculture, technology, and innovation tied. I just think it gives more clarity, because the question is, if members of the public are actually looking at this recommendation, they'll have no idea what those 3 priorities are. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking at this, and that makes some sense. I think that that kind of clarification could be helpful here. I'm wondering if it shouldn't read something like, further that staff are directed to include implementation of NPEDAC top priorities as outlined in the report, and action and forward for actioning in the 2023 budget process.
Yeah, whichever.
That's what we're trying to do, right? Is we're trying to send these forward to the budget process, saying these are acceptable priorities to this council.
Yeah.
Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, whichever way. I would appreciate. I would prefer them specifically listed, but you still have to go looking for the report. That's all. If they're not, I just think that you should be listed in the recommendation. Thank you.
The listing is fairly long. If you want to play a Councillor Johnston and ask me to read them all, I'm going to be a little frustrated with you, but I think I see the intent here. something in the water? I don't know. Okay. How strongly do you feel about that? All right. I'm just going to revise this a little bit. And then we need to see if our mover and seconder are comfortable with those revisions. So the resolution, I think, reads like this: acknowledging Councillor Rothwell's concern, but I'm not going to read that table. Maybe we can just say we're injecting the table into the resolution. I'm looking to the clerk. There's a table with the priorities, right? CAO Snell might have a suggestion. You are microphone 13?
13B.
Please pick it up.
So just to address Councillor Rothwell's position, I think we just would say top priorities: agriculture, technology and innovation, positioning for success, and affordable and attainable housing, business partnership and housing development.
Okay, that seems reasonable. Do we have, I'm hoping the deputy clerk has sort of picked up on those suggestions as the text for the resolution. So I think it reads, further, the staff are directed to include implementation of the MPEDAC top priorities, blah and blah, and forward for actioning in the 2023 budget process. Yeah, okay. All right, let's turn to the mover. Councillor Andreessen, you okay with that revision?
I agree with revision, thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Behrens, you're okay with that? Okay, thank you. All right, so we have an improved resolution with greater clarity. Further discussion or debate on this one? Everyone understands what we're voting on? All right, let's have the vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Couch. Pass our regards along to the committee for their excellent work in moving forward to a fairly precise agenda for the early part of next term of council. All right, that moves us forward to item 5.3. And first up is drains here. So item 5.3.1, let the minutes note that Councillor Behrens has exited the chamber. Council is asked to finalize matters relating to the construction now completed of the Burfelts municipal drain. Are there any questions from council on this matter before we consider the resolutions? All right, first we have, well, I guess it's just one. It's just one. Bylaw 99-2022 being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 106-2021 for the construction of the Bearfelts municipal drain be introduced, read, and considered read for second and third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Johnston, thank you. And Councillor Richardson will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Councillor Behrens is returning to the chamber, and now I think it's Councillor Andreessen's part in the dance. She is exiting the chamber per the minutes. In item 5.3.2, Council is asked to finalize matters pertaining to the construction now completed of the Binning municipal drain. Are there any questions or comments from Council before we consider the resolution? Seeing none, as follows, that Bylaw 100-2022 being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 132-2018 for the construction of the Binning municipal drain be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed. Said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for mover on this? Thank you. Councillor Enstedt will move, and our seconder will be Councillor Rothwell. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Councillor Andreessen, you may return. Okay, we have no reports this evening from the Programs Department as item 5.4. Further, no reports from the Facilities Department is item 5.5. Further, item 5.6, and from Environmental Services, no reports here this evening either. And also for 5.7, reports from our Manager of Operations, we have no reports from that department this evening as well. That moves us along to item 5.8, reports from the Development and Protective Services Department. As item 5.8.1, council is invited to exempt from part lot control lands designated as residential in the Elma ward. The usual purpose of such an action is to allow adjustment of lot lines between residential parcels. County of Perth Planner Jerica Gilbert is with us to present an overview of this action. Welcome, Planner Gilbert.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I'm just going to share my screen. And we'll put in present. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. So yes, this is application for exemption from part lot control, application 9-2022. The applicant is Reed's Heritage Homes. And there's actually 4 blocks of the what we have come to know as the Dalmich subdivision in Atwood, which is a community just south of Listowel. So as we can see, there are 3 blocks under contemplation: Block 45, Block 50, and Block 51. So the official plan designation is serviced urban area, and the zoning is residential zone 5. And earlier this year, there was 3 minor variance applications that were approved by the North Perth Committee of Adjustment to allow the lot sizes on these blocks to have an increase in lot coverage from 50% to 55% for Block 45, and then for Block 50 and 51, respectively, 50 to 54%. So exemption from part lot control applications are part of Section 50.7 of the Planning Act, which basically suspends part lot control from Section 50.5 of the same Act. It is a very useful tool for plans of subdivision like the Dalmich subdivision, where builders at the time of building don't know precisely where the townhouse lot lines will be going down. So exemption from part lot control allows blockless lots on a plan of subdivision to have the lot lines put where the walls of the semis or row townhouses are. So it's a little confusing, but I'm going to take you on a bit of a walk. So in the bottom right, I'm going to show where on the reference plan this is looking at. Development on Block 45 is probably the least furthest along, which I believe is an oxymoron now that I say that, but the foundations are in for units 11 to 15. Not quite there for lots 6 to 10. But after speaking with the applicants, there will be a surveyor on site when the foundations are poured. Lots 1 to 5 in this slide. And then the same lot's just looking at the corner here, and the corner lot has a larger side yard setback since it's exterior to the yard. Block 51, and then the furthest along I would say would be Block 50. I do recommend that these applications be approved. There is a bylaw before council, and should it be approved tonight, it would go to the delegated authority of Perth County Council for approval. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for letting me present this application tonight.
Thank you, Jerica. Council questions or first comments on this matter? I'm not seeing any. So we have 2 resolutions. One is a bylaw. Let's go through them in order. The first is that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the application by Reed's Heritage Homes for the exemption of part lot control on lands described as Plan 44M84, Blocks 45, 50, and 51, Elma Ward, Municipality of North Perth. If the proposed bylaw is adopted, it shall be forwarded to the County of Perth for approval. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Seiler, thank you, and Councillor Richardson is our seconder. Discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And now the bylaw as follows, that bylaw number 127-2022, being a bylaw to exempt from part lot control, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed. And that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Johnston and Councillor Duncan as our seconder. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Thank you, Planner Gilbert. I think your duties are done for this meeting then?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up is item 5.8.2. Council is invited to amend the North Perth zoning bylaw for a property on Mitchell Road South in the Elma Ward, commonly known as the Pioneer Gas Bar. This action will allow the proponents to construct a drive-through restaurant on the location as an addition to the current convenience store and gas pumps. County of Perth planner Susanna Reed, I believe, was involved in this file, but it's going to be Ms. McMullen, the manager of planning for County of Perth, who will present an overview of this action. Welcome, Ms. McMullen.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, and good evening to members of council. I am going to run through the gist of this planning application for a zoning bylaw amendment at 605 Mitchell Road South, and it is zoning bylaw number 9-2022. And as mentioned by Mayor Kasenberg, it's at the location of the Pioneer Gas Bar on Mitchell Road South at the corner of that road and Kincaid Street West in Listowel. And the gas bar also on that property includes a convenience store component. So the zone right now is C3-12, which is a highway commercial zone with a special provision on it that permits certain types of commercial uses at the site. And the applicant would like to add a drive-through type of restaurant to the site, which currently isn't permitted through that zoning. And so the zoning bylaw amendment itself is an addition of text to this site-specific provisions. And what they do is they point to some existing definitions in the zoning bylaw that explain what is meant by fast food restaurant, and that points to the 3 different types of restaurants that are defined, one being a drive-through. One item of note on this file is that a stormwater management easement is required for this site to develop properly, overlands to the south. And the applicant acknowledges that through discussions with Planner Reed that the need for that easement will have to be addressed through a consent application, and that would be before any site plan agreement would be obtained by the municipality of North Perth. So that sort of domino of items and how they would occur has been discussed with North Perth staff and with the applicant. So the application for zoning amendment tonight to permit that drive-through at that location, 605 Mitchell Street, is recommended to be approved. Zoning bylaw 9-2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McMullen. Questions or comments from council at this point? Grab the paper here. Ms. McMullen, I have a question myself. I understand, I think, the process, but I want to walk through it just to make sure. Certainly, I think this council saw at a public meeting a site plan that raised a number of concerns. And at this point, I understand that we're being approached about the zoning bylaw, which would enable the next step, which would be to present the final and complete proposed site plan. What and who will see that next site plan at this point, and how will it be determined whether some of the concerns expressed by this council are addressed in that site plan proposal?
Yeah, thanks for the question. That's my understanding too, is that there were items brought forth by North Perth Council about the site plan itself, and those have been noted for being addressed in the site plan control stage. So staff, North Perth staff planning, county planning staff will be reviewing that site plan and attempting to address all of those concerns through that process and through consultation with the applicant. And those would be summarized, the degree to which they've been resolved, and then a recommendation put forth to your approval authority, which I believe is also a member of staff.
Okay, so this council won't see a site plan next on this property that has been delegated as an authority to staff. CAO Snell, let me find the right microphone here. Go ahead.
So prior to the provincial legislative change, this council did delegate site plan control approval to staff. Since then, the provincial government has required that all councils delegate site plan approval to staff. So therefore, yes, it will be staff reviewing and approving the site plan. Now, I understand one of the major concerns was traffic. In speaking with our traffic consulting engineer about the access, both developments, including this development and the one to the south, will have to demonstrate to our traffic engineer that they can operate effectively, efficiently, and independent of the access easement prior to us approving a site plan.
Thank you. I think the one of the other concerns that was raised in our discussion about this is that the actual individual fabric, so traffic flow on the individual fabric, was of some concern because it looked like it was going to be or could be quite dense. And so I want some assurances, at least, that staff has heard that message and will be considering that in the context of their review of the site plans.
Yes, that would be a requirement of the site plan review. They will have to demonstrate traffic movement within the site for their own traffic and satisfy our traffic engineer that the site can effectively operate.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions or first comments? Okay, I have a resolution for consideration then as follows. Actually, it's two. First, that the North Perth Council receives the report entitled ZBA 9-2022 2720753 Ontario Inc. Pioneer Gas Bar for lands described as Part Lot 30, Concession 1, RP 44R 5581, Parts 1 to 3, Elma Ward, Municipality of North Perth, and that Council approves ZBA 9-2022, submitted by 2720753 Ontario Inc. for lands described as Part Lot 30, Concession 1, RP 44R 5581, Parts 1 to 3, Elma Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 605 Mitchell Road South, Listowel. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Seiler. Any discussion or debate on this one? All right, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And now the bylaw as follows, that bylaw number 128-2022 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 6-ZB-1999 is amended, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Johnston, thank you, and a seconder will be Councillor Anstead. Any discussion or debate on that? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Sally, I think you're staying with us for the next one, if I'm not mistaken. So let's have a look at this one. Item 5.8.3 advises council of an application for an official plan amendment number 206, heading to the county council table for consideration this week, pertaining to lands in Elma Ward for which there is a proposition for mixed residential commercial development. This is an opportunity for this council to review and comment on this proposal. And Ms. McMullen, the Manager of Planning at the County of Perth, is with us tonight to introduce this file. Ms. McMullen, the floor is now yours.
Mayor Kusenberg, and yeah, I'm filling in for this file as well. It's Perth County Official Plan Amendment number 206. The property is noted on the screen there. Hopefully you can see my screen. It's
yes,
noted by this.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So it's noted by the star here, Mitchell Road South. We just talked about this property. I don't know. Can you see my cursor as well?
Can we see the cursor? Yes, I'm told we can. I'm not seeing it, but Councillor Johnston is, so one of us is right.
All right. Well, we've just talked about Pioneer Gas Bar, which is just above the star here on the screen, and the property now that we're going to talk about here is just underneath that star, again on Mitchell Road South. And the agent for the applicant, Pierre Chauvin, is also in attendance tonight and could certainly facilitate to answer questions that council may have. And this application is on behalf of a numbered company, as well as care of Nazar Mawani. It's for a mixed use development. So the property is outlined here. Sorry?
There aren't any comments at this point. Carry on.
Okay, I thought I heard something on the, perhaps someone's not muted. So the property is outlined here with purple dashes on the screen. Its size is 1.85 hectares, and it is currently designated fringe with special policies to permit highway commercial development. And what's proposed by the official plan amendment is a mixed use, which would instead permit mixed use buildings and take the form of residential and commercial development in one lot, and standalone buildings for either of those two uses as well. This slide shows that highway designation, or sorry, the fringe designation along the highway there. This is the property here, the L-shaped. And currently, what has been implemented on the site with special policies is specific commercial uses permitted by the bylaw. And so what was being asked for in the official plan amendment then is to replace the existing special policy with a new special policy. And the text of that has been proposed to you and is included in the report. Now I will note that that is not exactly as written or proposed by the applicant, but has been amended by staff. And we're going to go through some of the specific details here next. So there was four sort of policy questions presented to this council and to county council for the purposes of information and public meetings. And one of them was the commercial land component. So there was a retail market study in 2018, and it talked about the needs for commercial use, commercial development throughout Listowel and the study area. And it talks about just over 448,000 square feet of commercial space, including retail and service uses, being needed by the population and the anticipated growth of that population up until the 2031 period. And that was reviewed this summer again, just for the purpose of updating and the purposes of evaluating the application that's been proposed. So that translates to, there's a couple of ratios that are used, but that translates roughly into about 41 acres or 16 hectares. So staff did a sort of a high level look at what do we have now, what do we have developed since that 2018 number of 446 was determined. And we looked at existing vacancies. We looked at the developments that have occurred or are occurring currently. And we looked at some of the areas that we've been considering for growth for commercial uses, and are satisfied that that amount of commercial growth can be accommodated in this area. And how it's relevant to this application is in trying to determine what is an appropriate amount of commercial that would be sort of reserved on the site, given that there's sort of two uses proposed, residential and commercial. And so looking at that study, there's sort of three nodes identified for commercial uses in the listable area, and this property at the west side of town is one of those three important nodes. And it was noted in that study and in the update this summer that this is a particularly sort of important parcel as well of that commercial growth. So the intention here is to protect or reserve a space along the highway corridor where commercial uses would be located on the site. And that's in addition to sort of assessing how much commercial space should be addressed on the site. So the official plan amendment as proposed was revised by planning staff to include a maximum of 32,000 square feet and a minimum of 13,000 square feet of gross floor area for commercial uses on this site. The remaining item is something that is sort of a point of discussion and something that we're looking to North Perth Council to offer your interest, preferences, questions on. And that is the another thing that was amended in the text by staff was to require that commercial development be built in advance of residential development. And the next slide actually shows the planning department's wording on that. So that 206 as drafted by the planning department would include that requirement that the commercial lands come or the commercial development occur first. And the reasoning for that was to ensure that it sort of happens because we can use the tools before us to sort of reserve that space along the commercial corridor on the site, but not necessarily have any sort of ability to influence it happening at a particular time. And so the zoning, the wording there would be that that the zoning bylaw not permit residential development prior to the establishment of a commercial use. Now, what has been commented by MHBC and by the applicant, so on behalf of their client, is that that may be good, or that may be the planning department's perspective in trying to sort of reserve that space and protect it and make sure that it happens. But in their opinion or in their experience, their market pressures or market influences make that it unrealistic to determine what would happen first or what interest there would be in the commercial ahead of the residential uses. And they know now that they're ready to proceed with some of their residential uses on the site. So they have proposed a different wording, and that is something that we would like to discuss or have council discuss tonight. And that is the difference in their language would be that as such, residential development will not be permitted unless a comprehensive site plan, which provides for a mix and range of residential and commercial uses, has been approved to the satisfaction of the municipality of North Perth. So essentially not requiring there to be this phasing where commercial happens first, but that there is this site plan stage that happens in order to ensure its location in the eventuality that there is a commercial developer that wants to come and utilize that space that's reserved along the highway on this site. So there is a difference of opinion here. And we would like to have insights from council on that point. I'm going to review the other items that were of planning importance and highlight where we're at with them. The next one being affordable housing targets. So again, the developers propose that 15% of the housing will be affordable in this particular development, and they rely on the definition of affordable from CMHC and the specific program, MLI Select program, and requested that we use that definition. And so the following policy has been included to sort of set the stage for that discussion, and that is that there be an affordable housing target within the subject lands of 15% of the total number of units, and that definition be fully described and clarity provided during the zoning bylaw amendment stage. It's important to have a statement about affordable housing in the site-specific amendment because, as you know, the official plan doesn't currently have targets identified strongly for affordable housing, and also it would be specific to this site, the 15%. So it helps to set about that goal of the municipality and the developer, that mutual goal, and then relies on zoning to specify how that would be implemented and some details around it. Density was also considered one of the planning areas of interest, and the Perth County official plan offers that 40 to 60 units per hectare is considered high density, whereas the applicant is proposing 98 units per hectare. And so the question was, are we prepared to implement something like that in this community, and how would we do that well? So it's important, I think, both the applicant and the reviewing planner, Susanna, have discussed the urban design brief and having that be an important step of the site plan stage. And I think we also have, like, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting, we've been working on some guidelines around residential intensification that could be used as fodder for that discussion when that time comes in here. So recognizing that design is a really important aspect of increasing density in a way that that works for a community and allows us to integrate some higher densities for the efficient use of land. Traffic was discussed and is actually still being discussed. The North Perth traffic engineer has conveyed to us that they feel it's quite possible to address the road system and access for the site. And they would and have scheduled discussions for that, I believe, later this week. And it facilitates the conversation to know that the use has been determined through this official plan amendment. And that is the scope of the planning issues that were discussed in previous report to you and to County Council, those items. And again, I would like to entertain some conversation or discussion around the commercial piece and the wording that's proposed from the planning department as a means of giving importance to that commercial part of this mixed use, and the different wording proposed by the applicant to ensure that that space is reserved and identified along the corridor, but not requiring that it be developed prior to the residential uses. And the text, as I said, of the official plan amendment is attached to your report, what's proposed. And the application with the amended text is recommended for approval. And we seek North Perth's Council's opinion on that prior to making recommendation to County Council. And as I mentioned, Pierre is here to speak. I believe Nazir is also here to answer questions. And I think I will leave it there for now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. McMullen. So questions and first comments on this from council? I think there are a couple of issues that that the planner has highlighted for us that we should be aware of and perhaps tackle before we move forward with any resolution here. So I invite that commentary at this point from anyone. Okay, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. I don't necessarily have an issue. I understand that it is previously written to have the commercial done first, but I don't have an issue with the combination of the two as well, because they go part and parcel to determine the type of business that you're going to be putting in there. That I don't really have an issue with a mixed with a mix that has been proposed by the applicant to be able to do it sort of hand in hand as the development progresses. So I don't have significant concerns with that at this particular point.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Richardson. Anyone else want to weigh in on that issue, which is the timing or sequencing or phasing of this project? Councillor Duncan, there we go.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Richardson. I don't have a big problem with them going ahead with the residential component ahead of the commercial, as long as we know it's on a site plan and we know that there's area reserved for the commercial development aspect of this plan.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Deputy Mayor Kellum is next.
Yes, and thank you, Mayor Kiesenberg, and I also support my two colleagues here as well. I have no problem with the developer moving ahead with the mix and starting off with the buildings first as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. Just a couple of questions here. Is this, and through to you, to Manager of Planning, Sally, thanks, Sally, for your report. There's a question I have in my mind in terms of, is this developer experienced in both residential and commercial, or are they primarily residential developers?
I don't know if Sally has an answer to that, but we do have Mr. Mawani and Mr. Chauvin on. If council wants the answer to that question, then we could consent to let them speak and give that answer. Does anyone object to either of those parties intervening here? All right, so Mr. Chauvin or Mr. Mawani, welcome to the meeting. Council has given consent to you to answer that question, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Pierre, we're not hearing you very well. You might need to get closer to your microphone.
Okay, I'll try to speak up.
That's much better.
Thank you, Mayor Kiesenberg, members of council. To answer the question, yes, my client is very experienced in both residential and commercial, both within Canada and internationally.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's go back. I think Councillor Rothwell has.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yep. So my further question is this, just in terms of, in my mind, I think for council as well, is there an intent that this entire parcel is going to be remain under one ownership? Or is in fact the intent that the commercial lands could be severed into a separate parcel, and the residential lands could at some point in time be either under an application for condominium, or how is the intent in ownership or potential ownership, or if it's all rental on the residential side? Thank you.
Mr. Chauvin.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor Kiesenberg. It's a great question. I would say that we haven't concluded on that yet. There is a possibility that we may divide this up by condominium to identify for example, the residential units as a separate unit so that they can continue to be owned and operated as rental units. And the commercial could be a separate entity, all tied by the common elements, which would be the shared road and parking and those types of things. But again, it's still very early days on that, and we haven't concluded on that just yet. But that is a possibility I would just preface that as well, though our intent is all along is to maintain the apartments as rental.
Thank you very much for the response, and I understand that. My issue of concern here is that this land has been designated for commercial development since 1997, and we've seen only a portion of that land developed for commercial. I understand the planning department's intent here is that the primary use of the site, at least along the frontage of Metro Road South, is for commercial development. And the hope would be, and I'm sure your client's hope also would be, that commercial development will come hopefully sooner rather than later. But the conundrum I think this council has and our community have is that we need affordable, attainable housing now. And on that basis, I would certainly agree with what the fellow councillors have said, is that we may want to see residential in hand here if that is the intent to move forward. You know, that being said, I do have concerns in terms of, you know, this particular site for affordable housing or higher density housing. From a planning perspective, I don't find it the most top priority location for affordable, attainable housing, adjacent to the second busiest road within North Perth, and adjacent to gas station and so on. But nevertheless, as I think this council has said before, is that we need to look at significant densities, and if this is what your client has brought forward, I can understand that. I would prefer it to be in a location which is closer to potential parkland or natural areas further to the southwest of this site. But frankly, that's not before us here tonight. So on that basis, I do support what the other councillors have said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Mr. Chauvin?
Respond to some of those comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chauvin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Just in response and through you, our client's intention is to build the residential affordable housing, as you know, and our intent was to build the first and second towers of those residential units first, for a couple reasons. One, we are applying through CMHC through the Select program, and we can't wait 3 or 4 years. We don't know what's going to happen to that program in 3 or 4 years, and so to wait for the commercial development to proceed first would just delay bringing on not only the affordable housing component, but put in jeopardy the funding that's currently available to us. So that is a fundamental concern. Secondly, I've never in my 25 years of planning seen a requirement that we are forced to build commercial or any staging, unless if it's related to some kind of servicing or access or other type of infrastructure type of issue. And the other aspect of it is the fact that that's just not how the commercial market works. It's not like the residential market. So I think, most financial institutions won't be lending money to construct particularly commercial buildings without having a 75% of it leased out. So it's to build something like that on speculation is just highly unlikely, and it just won't happen. So there's some fundamental problems with it, and I think I've provided a solution there to respond to the concern. We are committed to providing commercial. We will work with your staff with respect to a site plan that shows and provides for that commercial. And in fact, we may even find that there, depending on the demand in the market, provide more commercial than what we're proposing today. However, at this point, we are simply showing a minimum as required by and as listed, identified by the official plan amendment, and we're committed to that. And that it will ensure that you do get commercial here, and with a comprehensive site plan, that will be enforced through the site plan process. I think I'll leave it at that. I forget my other comment at this point. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chauvin. Councillors, any other comments or questions? Councillor Duncan.
Thanks. I just have one question for Pierre. Pierre, how is the stormwater management being handled on this property?
Yes, great question through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. It is being controlled through the existing subdivision, the Nickel subdivision. There is a stormwater management pond to the southwest of this property, and it's somewhat tied to the previous application that you've heard of the Pioneer Gas. There is an easement that we will need to realign through the redevelopment of our site to accommodate the stormwater management of the Pioneer Gas Station. And hopefully we can come to a resolution with those developers on the relocated easement for that storm.
Thanks, Mr. Chauvin. Any further comments? Councillor Behrens?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. And it's really just a comment. I do have concerns for the commercial aspect of it. We've seen the reason we're here is because you're asking for changes in the county official plan as to what it was previously designated for. And yes, most certainly we do need affordable and attainable housing. I am not convinced that this is the spot for it. My concern is that, just from Pierre's words himself, saying that we don't know what the market is for commercial, so we're not going to build it. I would suspect that maybe, at any point in time, if North Perth approves this, it's going to come back and it's going to say there is no market for commercial. We're going to build all residential. We've seen applications amended, time and time again. I understand that you say that you have a commitment to include commercial, but plans change all the time. So I'm going to be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make comments or ask questions at this point? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. I do want to just focus in on one separate issue. In the proposed amendment, which Sally McMillan read from the County Planning Department, we're looking at a density range between a minimum of 30 hectares and a maximum of 98 units per hectare. I am really concerned about that range, and the reason is that, as we've just said, there's a significant need, desperate need for affordable, attainable housing, and we need significant densities. And through you, Mayor Todd, I would like to suggest that minimum number should be much greater, perhaps somewhere in the order of 78 to 88 units per hectare to a maximum of 98. I am convinced that our densities need to get greater and not the smaller. And understanding what the applicant's agent has said, Pierre Chauvin, that they're committed in terms of the two towers and so on. My hope would be that if the amendment is approved, we'd be looking at that high end of 98 units per hectare as opposed to the low or minimum amount of 30. So I am suggesting that this council consider recommending through the Perth County Council that perhaps that minimum number be increased substantially. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that raises a new piece in here. As we understood, we were to discuss the issue of sequencing, and I think we've done that. And now we're looking at that density floor. Yeah. And Councillor Rothwell has injected the notion that perhaps we'd be wise to try a floor density of 70 units per hectare. The premise, I assume, is that because we're going to use this land for residential, when it was not ever really considered to be residential historically, that we might as well use it with high density and insist on high density for the purposes of the outcome that is desirable for all. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as I said in my earlier comments, we are at a time when it's crucial that we see a developer which has brought forward a project here and an intent to see development at densities that we have not seen here in North Perth before. But if there is, in fact, market, as it was shown in the report, in the report by the County Planning Department, and looking at other jurisdictions where the densities are as high or higher than this, I think it behooves us as North Perth Council to make that recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let me just sort of do a little bit of testing about this. So we can amend the resolution before we actually put it on the floor to address both of these issues. We can talk, one, about the sequencing clause and suggest that, in fact, we recommended the county that they revert to the applicant's sequencing or phasing clause for this project. And we can also suggest that a minimum residential density target be applied in the process. And Councillor Rothwell suggested 70 for the sake of argument. Sounds good to me. Maybe we should go to CAO Snell and ask CAO Snell whether there's anything concerning about having a floor density of 70 on this one.
That's probably a question actually for the applicant as much as anybody.
Okay. So let me turn, if council will indulge, then let me turn to the applicant, Mr. Chauvin. You've heard the comment that if you're going to use this land, well, then let's use it densely. And this council would recommend to Perth County Council that a minimum density higher than that that's been shown so far in this application be applied. Are you comfortable with that? Your team partner with that? Comfortable?
Yes, we are. I have no problem with establishing a minimum density like that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Duncan, you
No, I just was going to ask Pierre
suggest? Okay.
why they set the density at the low end of 30. That's just what
Right.
they're comfortable with going up. I'm happy with that too.
Fair enough. Okay. So I think we're at the point where we could consider a resolution. Is it council prepared to consider a resolution then? It's going to look a little different than what was in the package, but let's try this as a first attempt, and I invite anyone to help me refine it. As follows: that North Perth Council receives a report titled Perth County Official Plan Amendment 206, submitted by 100664825 Manitoba Limited, care of Nizar Mawani, dated October 17th, 2022, affecting lands described as Park Lot 30, Concession 1, Elma Ward, Municipality of North Perth. And that North Perth Council endorsed the Planning Department's recommendation to Perth County Council that Perth County Official Plan Amendment 206, submitted by 100664825 Manitoba Limited, care of Nizar Mawani, be approved, with recommendations that sequencing clauses proposed be reverted to the text proposed by the applicant in OPA 206, and that minimum residential densities be adjusted to 70 units per hectare. Covers both of those bases. Anyone have any revisions that they see? Did I miss anything obvious? Okay. Can I call for a mover? So Councillor Richardson and Deputy Mayor Kellen will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate further on this matter? All right. Seeing none, let's have that vote. Is he scribe behaving itself?
That's coming.
There we go.
Just, I think there's an issue with the second part. It's a floor density of 70 be established.
No, I think that's what it says. They'll correct the text.
Okay.
Yeah,
On that
correct
basis.
the text. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and that is carried 9-1. Thank you very much, Ms. McMullen. Thank you for being on standby, Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Mawani. And I will say that I believe that with regards to this project, we send a clear signal to future developers as well that we expect to see higher densities in their projects and that we're serious about affordability of housing in our community. So I'm grateful for council agreeing generally on this matter. All right. Thank you. Let's move on to item 6 on our agenda. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or of our committees? I'm not seeing any indication of that, so let's move to item 7. We have received no additional items of correspondence for our disposition, which means we can move along to item 8. We have one additional bylaw item for consideration at tonight's meeting. For item 8.1, council is asked to authorize the promulgation of an agreement with EFS Plastics related to waste handling. Any questions before we consider this matter from council? Seeing none, I have a resolution for our consideration as follows, that bylaw number 129-2022, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement with EFS Plastics, Inc., be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson, thank you, and Councillor Anstett will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That allows us to move to item 9 on our agenda. Are any councillors wishing leave to give notice of motion this evening? Seeing none, let's move to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? And indeed, those who are connected still by web conference, if they have something, they should draw that to the attention of the clerk through the text chat window as well. Anyone have an item to raise? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. And just for members of the public as well, this council spoke about the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation and our desire to see additional action on assessors and so on. And just this past week, we received some note that one of the assessors had stopped by our property just to confirm completion of a small project that we had undertaken. And I did respond to them, and they were quite diligent in getting that information. And my hope would be that the expressed concerns of this council in terms of something much more substantial than a small shed are taken care of in such an expeditious manner. Thank you.
Dare I say hear, hear. Okay. Anyone else with an announcement that would be of favor to our community? Councillor Johnston, you shared with me some news before this council meeting. Maybe you'd like to share it again.
Yeah, that's the news. I will be absent at our next council meeting, our last meeting of this term, because I will be coaching a team of young 4-H members at the Royal Agriculture Winter Fair, the 100th Royal. We have 9 4-H'ers from Perth County, and I'm very pleased that 5 of the 9 are North Perth residents. So we are very North Perth heavy on the Perth County team this year. We will hopefully be back here with some presentations to make. Would be nice.
Excellent news. I was waiting for hashtag North Perth Proud, but excellent news. Thank you. And thank you for your service as their coach, Councillor Johnston. Much appreciated. Anyone else with an announcement at this hour? All right. That moves us to agenda item number 11. Depending on how you count them, we have 1 or 2 matters. They're both real estate related. To be considered in a closed session of council. I'm going to read the resolution that explains and enables our action to enter that closed session. The resolution is as follows: that this council proceed in camera at 8:32 p.m. to address a matter pertaining to the following: a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board regarding property described as Concession 2, Part Lot 24, Wallace, North Perth, and Concession 2, Part Lot 13, Part Lot 14, subject to ROW, Elma Ward, North Perth. That's a new one for me. Can I call for a mover for this? Councillor Rothwell, thank you. And Councillor Duncan will be our seconder here. Any discussion or debate on this resolution to enter closed session? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. So those who are currently attending through web connection and our lone guest in the gallery at this hour need to absent themselves for the next little section of our meeting. Any staff who've been invited to be here, welcome. Those who are not are invited to also exit at this hour. We will secure the doors to the chamber shortly, and we're going to change the audio-visual inputs so that we may have a confidential discussion. So everyone hang on. All right. So that brings us to item 12 on our agenda. I can confirm that council did discuss the matters identified in our enabling resolution for a closed session meeting of council and did give staff direction pertaining to the matter, the essence of which will remain confidential at this time for the reasons stipulated in our enablement of a closed session. Council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. I think there are two councillors that need to step out of the room at this point. I have the draft for confirmatory bylaw number 130-2022, which reads as follows. The bylaw number 130-2022 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the council of the municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Richardson has moved this and seconded by Councillor Johnston. Any discussion or debate on this? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And we're missing one. Can you tell us who? Councillor Seiler. There we go. We got Councillor Seiler in now, and so that is carried. Thank you. Okay. And then we invite our colleagues back to the table for adjournment. All right, councillors, we did complete the deliberations and take action on the business that came before us tonight. I have a motion to adjourn as follows. The council meeting adjourns at 8:51 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, November 7th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Barnes, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Duncan, thank you. That's not debatable, so we get to vote. And that is carried. This council will meet again in chambers for its next regular meeting on Monday, November 7th, 2022. Until that hour, this meeting is adjourned.